Welcome back, it's me, Lou. I'm here for another action figure unboxing and review, and today we are showcasing this Masters of the Universe Evil-Lyn. So this is from Mattel. This is new for 21, and like the other Origins figures, it's modern posing, retro play. Okay, so I believe this is the second Evil-Lyn that we've gotten in the Origins line. So what makes this figure more unique than the previous one is that if you look at the bubble, there's a sticker here and it says Masters of the Universe. Alright, we already know this figure belongs to Masters of the Universe, but if you're a longtime fan or collector, you'll recognize this logo as the logo belonging to the older 2000 X line. So this figure is actually based off of the previous figure from, I don't know, that was such a long time ago, so it could be like, what, at this point, 15 years ago maybe? Or is that too far back? So back in the early 2000s, I mean, that's why it's called the 2000X line, Mattel kind of rebooted Masters of the Universe, and they gave it a design aesthetic that was kind of brought up to like, you know, what people consider more modern, a much more modern standard. The characters were very stylized. They kind of borderline like superhero slash anime, but still retaining that fantasy, high-tech science fiction look that they always had. And in the case of Evil-Lyn, this is how she kind of appeared in the 2000X line. So I'm very curious because it's kind of neat that they're pulling a character from a previous incarnation of Masters of the Universe and releasing it under the Origins label. It's almost kind of similar to the concept of multiverses. It's like they're acknowledging that there was a different universe, but they're going to take that character design and kind of bring it into the, you know, the here and now, but under the Origins label. So it's kind of neat. I really appreciate that a lot. So I'm very excited about this figure because the 2000X Evil-Lyn was actually a figure from that line of toys that I couldn't find. There were a handful of figures, like I believe there was that, Zodak. I don't know, there's some of the characters for me, they were difficult to find on shelves at the store. And every now and then I'll comb eBay and I'll check out the secondary market prices, and they're just kind of a little too rich for my blood. So in many ways, not that this is a substitute for it, but I'm just glad that I have some physical form of that specific incarnation of that character. As we look at the back, there's some beautiful illustrative artwork here. We have Trapjaw, we have Merman, and this is the Lords of Power Merman, I believe. There's Stinkor, and then there's Triclops, and I can't remember which costume of Triclops. I think this is alright, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but is this his appearance in the comic book? Because I know this figure was re-released recently. So we got the first version of Triclops, and this is the second version. And I think the second version is based off his like first appearance or something of the sort. It says here, with dark magic at her disposal, Evil-Lyn's powers make her one of Eternia's greatest threats. And here's the play feature. She comes with her crystal ball on staff that she could just wield. She's multi-articulated, as we see here. And other figures in her wave include He-Man, Faker, Skeletor, Fisto, Evil-Lyn, and Merman. So let's get this out and take a look at it. Alright, we have the documentation, the comic book, and we have the little instructions that kind of let you know which parts are removable. So if you have like Tila or Sorceress or the other Evil-Lyn, you can swap the head, the arms. She detaches at the waist and at the boots. Here's the comic book. This one's called Sucker Punch. And this is a great throwback to the old 80s comics that we got with the old vintage toys. It's always neat. Back in the day, you'd get these cool little mini books. So yeah, that's awesome. It's a fun little bonus. So we'll set this aside for now. Okay, so we have Evil-Lyn here. First impressions while she's still in the tray. Really excited, really stoked to have her. I just noticed I'm like bleeding here. So I don't know where that came from. Okay, so we have Evil-Lyn here. She looks great. Much different in terms of color scheme as opposed to the first release. And we'll talk about that in a second. But as I mentioned earlier, this figure's in at least the color scheme and designs. I think it's inspired by the 2000X line, and I'm just glad to have some physical form of that character. Okay, let's get her staff out. I'm like horrible at taking out these weapons out of their baggies. There we go. Okay, we have our staff. It looks to be like the same staff as before, just casted in a different colored plastic. And here is Evil-Lyn. Let's get into focus. Here. Yeah, so the color scheme is a lot different. She's a lot paler. As you'll remember, the first release of the figure, it was predominantly yellow skin, and then her armor, her headdress, her boots, it was primarily like blue with like a lighter blue trim. This one, on the other hand, it's a much more muted take on the character. So what you're looking at is purple outfit, light purple trim. Her flesh tone's kind of like, it's a very like, it's like almost like it's a gray, but it's not like a pure gray. It might be my light, but for some reason I almost wanted to say like a very light olive gray, if that makes any sense. Her headdress is black with light purple trim. The skull is right there. I believe the head sculpt might be the same as the one we got before. Articulation wise is what you come to expect from Evil-Lyn. Her head rotates, arms rotate, they go out, elbow bend, elbow swivel, waist swivel, knees could kick, the legs could kick, they could kick out. She has a single jointed knee and some ankle articulation. Detail wise, the sculpting is pretty much I think the exact same as the previous figure. Let's get into focus. My camera does not want to focus on her. Yeah, so sculpting wise, it looks to be identical. You're just getting essentially a color swap of the character. And since we're on the subject of Evil-Lyn, let's actually bring out the previous figure. Alright, so here's the previous figure. As you can see, there's a very stark difference in terms of their color. As to which one you need for your collection, I think it's up to you. It's kind of based on personal preference. Alright, so I had to do some research because I've always been curious as to why there's been two different colors of Evil-Lyn. So the one here, the yellow one, this kind of mimics the original OG release that we got in the 1980s. And as I stated earlier, this color scheme is more in line with her appearance in the 2000X line. And I know that there's some divide. Some people prefer the yellow just because of nostalgia's sake, while some people like the more muted colors of her. Doing some research, that still wasn't enough for me. I think some people, I'm not sure if this is canon or not, or if it's more so just fan fiction or fan explanation. But I've read some people say that, in their opinion, Evil-Lyn, she has the more yellow appearance when she's imbued with magic and when she's like using her magic abilities or she's powering up. I've seen some people theorize that the reason why her skin's yellow is because maybe of her attachment to like Castle Grayskull or her attachment to like Skeletor. So I got to do some more homework on that. I couldn't find a definitive answer. If you do have a definitive answer as to why there's the two different colored versions, outside of the fact that one's classic and one's 2000 X, just leave it in the comments below. I'd really love to know more about that. And since we're still looking at Evil-Lyn, let's take a look at the Super 7 version of the figure. So Super 7 had the master's license for a couple of years. They lost it a few years ago. The figures they made, I thought they looked amazing. The articulation, it leaves something to be desired. It's not on the same par as like the Origin stuff, but this, on the sake of their appearance, they looked really nice. And here's the Super 7 Evil-Lyn. Now this version of her right here is, I believe it's based off more so the animation model that we saw in the original 80s cartoon. So she has a much more richer, normal flesh tone. Her costume, it's almost a combination of these two. It has the purple, but also has the light blue. And then she has the short cape that we see here. If I had to, now let's talk about like rating this figure. If I had to rate this figure numerically, I'd probably say, maybe a 7.5. I think that's about fair. She's all right. If you've handled Tila, it feels like you're kind of getting the same figure over and over again. I kind of wish they would do something maybe different with the expression on her face. It seems like her face was an afterthought. The body's well sculpted. The articulation's nice. I take it back. There is a noticeable difference here. All right, so one complaint I had about Evil-Lyn, Tila, maybe Sorceress, and some of the Masters of the WWE figures is that I completely hated the legs. Where the knee joint's broken, it looks weird. It doesn't look natural. When you bend it, it kind of juts out and you have this like sharp angle. And as I was looking at this figure, it seems like they've corrected that. If you look here, the upper leg is completely different. It's a much more natural looking kneecap. And I take it back. I'm going to give this a higher rating of an 8. I'm glad that Mattel took the time out to make an improvement on the previous design. So yeah, I hated these legs. I hated that her knees were like, she's like obsolete of like kneecaps. There's no kneecaps here. But here, it's a complete improvement. So yeah, I kudos to Mattel for taking the time out. They easily could have just given us a complete repaint of this. But instead, there was some retooling done, and they gave her new upper legs with a much improved kneecap. It looks more natural when it bends. It looks more natural when it's just in a neutral position. So yeah, I stand corrected. It's they've made a correction here, and it's a much welcome one in my opinion. So I'm kind of curious now if they're going to go back, or if they've made changes to the first version and maybe I just never caught it. So if you have an eagle eye or if you're just informed about it, let me know in the comments below. Did they ever make a running change to the first version and give her the corrected legs, or is it always this weird kneecap here? But yeah, this looks a lot better. It looks a lot more natural. It doesn't look as broken as this one here. So I take it back. Yeah, this figure deserves at least an 8. It could be debatable. That might be too high, but on the merit that Mattel went back and retooled it and made a better knee, I think it deserves it. All right, so if you're like on a desert island and you can only be stuck with one Evil-Lyn figure, which one would it be? For me, I think it's going to be a toss-up. It's going to be a toss-up between these two. I do have an appreciation for the older one, just because, the vintage color of it. But I do like the subdued look of her. Like, for example, the Masters of the Universe Revelation Evil-Lyn that we got, it has a much more natural skin tone, much like this one. So I do like the natural skin tone, but I do like the articulation of this figure a lot. So I mean, it's all up to your own personal preference. You know, if you're very nostalgic for the original line, and you know you want something that mimics more of the original figure, this is more up your speed. If you grew up during the early 2000s and you're very fond of the Masters 2000X line, this might be the figure for you. Or if you just appreciate the much more muted color scheme, you know, this is pretty cool. I just like this figure because it looks like the cartoon one, and the articulation on this figure sucks, to be honest. It's horrible, but as a display piece, I think it looks really nice. The figure's hard to stand also, just because her legs aren't as posable as you'd like, so it's kind of hard to get it in that like sweet spot where it'll stand. You know, it's easy to like bump into a table, she might tip over, and she doesn't have any peg holes, so it's not like there's a figure stand for her. But I do like this figure a lot. Again, it's personal preference. So wrapping this video up, it's an excellent figure. You know, if you can find it on the store shelves, get it. I don't think you'll regret it, even if you do have this one. I think it's nice. It's a nice companion piece. We'll leave it at that. So until the next video, my name is Lou. Once again, thank you so much for checking out my video. If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you are a returning viewer or subscriber, thank you so much for your likes, comments, and support. So until the next video, go out there, be safe, enjoy your life, and just buy lots of toys. All right, take care.